All good. Okay. And then let me just do a screen share so that we got that. We go this way. All right. Is the group able to see the presentation materials? And I cannot see your chat, so if
Yes.
someone on the meeting,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you very much. So we are here to talk about requested budget submission materials, and then we can reserve any time at the end of this presentation for either questions on this or if there are other items that have come out in the budget manual that you have questions on. So we'll be talking a little bit about some of the framework for change. The budget submission materials have largely been the same for many, many years. So I wanted to at least go through some of the reason for some of the change right now. Then what the requirements, so we'll give a summary of the component parts of the requested budget. I'll have a couple slides on where we can find supportive guidance and resources that is either already on the website or will be on the website by the end of the day tomorrow. I have an overview of the current budget process map, and then we'll just talk about some of the next sessions that will be coming up. So with that, there is a significant amount of effort that goes into production of requested budget. The page count is nowhere near the replication of the amount of effort and time that bureaus put into producing requested budget submissions. This is really a proxy at best, but we wanted to highlight where all of the information comes through into council offices and then is posted on our website for the public, for public awareness. This is pretty much a snapshot in time and been relatively consistent over time with the approximate length of submissions for city bureaus. So with some of that in mind, we started thinking about some of the change framework for requested budgets. We know that there is capacity and bandwidth challenges and that any change also has its own trade-offs with capacity and bandwidth for both what bureaus are able to handle for change and then also what IT is able to do for change. So as was heard loud and clear in the CBO survey, there is interest in changing Pattern Stream, our budget publication software. However, the capacity and bandwidth for all end users right now and to go through a process of that type change is not something that would be able to be implemented quickly. So really looking at both operational bandwidth for change, shorter timeframes for implementation versus what are some of those items that we really should be considering on the longer term process change. The requested budget happens once a year. So, you know, we have to, if we are looking to make any of those type of larger systemic changes, we would need to start that process essentially in the spring in order to be ready for the coming January. And that's why a lot of our focus for this go around are looking at things that are shorter term to implement that do not require a change to city financial policy. So some of the items that are submitted are a requirement due to city financial policy, such as fine and fee studies and city 5-year plans. We also were really looking at areas that could be completed at a later phase in the budget that do not have to happen for the requested budget, or where we could reduce any duplicative efforts. And so we reached out to a couple and held a couple of focus group sessions on these items, seeking to ultimately strike a balance for transparency with the public and transparency with city resources and where those resources are programmed, but also not have an overly burdensome or duplicative process to get that content information. So what's on this slide is the submission checklist that we looked at when we were assessing the deliverables that are due with requested budgets. It's kind of hard to see in the PowerPoint presentation, but the items that have just a slightly darker bold, which are these middle items, are ones that met the criteria, or where we were looking at areas that have other opportunities for data input or for gathering information, or could be potentially streamlined or only requested at one point in the process, and did not require a change to city financial policy in order to make a change for requested budget submissions. So with that, I'm going to transition into what we are planning for the 23-24 requested budget submissions. Are there any questions on those prior slides at this point? Okay, so what we're looking at for submissions as requirements to date, remembering that we do not have mayor's budget guidance, would be to reduce content requirements in volumes 1 and 3. To have no change in volume 2, however, we have added language around either page count or really aiming for half page count, but things that could potentially help your writers as they are crafting narrative on fund summary. And then to not require the PM report, which is the standalone PDF performance measure report. The only other item on this list that was changed was the OEHR's budget equity assessment tool. Instead of copying and pasting that into BFM forms, we are going to revert back to the process prior of PDFing the Word document for a couple of good reasons that were brought up by some of our end users. It is a duplicative step. Many bureaus use the Word document to collect the information, review it, and then they are also able to add in links to online resources or documentation that those links do not necessarily come into BFM. In addition, the end user for BFM has to have a high degree of acumen and understanding of city budget language to understand what the tool is telling them, because they lose the content and descriptives that are in OEHR's budget equity tool in the Word format. BFM does not have the text capability to pull in as much information as is on the budget equity tool. So this is really, these next couple slides really just look at what was reduced and what remains. So for volume 1, what is reduced is there are narrative for significant issues, challenges, or ties to city plans. And then the narrative for bureaus that have large capital budget planning processes. That is a multi-page, multi-word inputs in the requested budget. And that what remains in volume 1 will be mission, vision, values, the bureau overview statements, and then any base budget changes at the bureau level. For volume 3, this is the program offer language. It removes fields for, there currently are 6 inputs and would be going down to 3 inputs for narrative. So it removes fields for explanation of services, budget narrative, and contact information, and remains fields for the program description, which should state what the program is intended to do and the outcomes it's expected. It's essentially a combination of the program goals and explanation of services. So 1 box instead of 2 for that narrative. There is no change to the equity impacts input. And then there is the changes to program section remains. The changes to program section is where we would recommend bureaus have language that should something change between the requested and the adopted, that this would be the primary language box that you would make edits to. So that's a few items there. Are there any questions on the what's reduced and what remains for these 2 volumes in Pattern Stream? One of the key pieces with Pattern Stream is like, it's fairly free form on volume 1. So this is basically saying that you do not need to write about these things in volume 1. We also know that the budget tool, the requested budget submissions, it's a communication tool, and there are other communication avenues for these items. And that's really where we started to look at what are things that might be duplicative and could be addressed in other areas. So the following are ways that bureaus, if you want to highlight content that is no longer required in volume 1, but you believe to be important. We have found, after reviewing multiple years of requested budgets, that historically the summary statements and executive letters frequently cite city bureau issues and challenges, ties to city planning efforts, and overall city mission, vision, and goals. Decision package narratives often include the required problem statement of what is going on and what the critical issue is to address by approval of the decision package. Capital budgeting, planning efforts, and future projects are frequently part of a Bureau's 5-year plan, financial plan, and CIP projects description. And then finally, performance measure data is included in both volumes 1 and 3, and thus including a separate PM1 report is duplicative. Are there any questions at this point? Because I cannot see people. So this week we are working to finish out on the online budget manual where we have some tools to help with this. We have posted the checklist for required submission requirements. This is basically an empty checklist that is to help with coordination of processes documents in the compilation of Bureau requested submissions. I'm working on a short technical support guide for program offers that includes word counts. So this would essentially be an empty template that bureaus could populate with narrative to then copy into your notepad and paste into Pattern Stream for updating your program offer language and helping with constructing in the recommended word count criteria. We also will have Pattern Stream user guides for formatting and reconciling BFM data to publish reports. So which reports in BFM match which tables in Pattern Stream, so you can see that the numbers are populating where you would expect them. The budget equity tool is on the current website right now. And then we've also updated 5-year plan, Word, and Excel templates for bureaus that use the templates in their processes. So this is a reminder for dates for moving primary source data, also known as SAP, into BFM. And following dates will also be in the manual, and all forms of source data must be created in SAP and then uploaded into BFM. So we do not create new data in BFM itself. It all lives and is pulled from SAP. The first date is the last payroll date. We talked about it at our last end user session, which is when payroll and SAP moves into BFM, anticipating that the reconciliation for position management is timed to occur between November 17th and or around December 1st. The reason for this is having positions in a base budget ready to go will allow for opening of full system access to hopefully occur earlier in December, and therefore giving bureaus more time in the budget software to prepare their budgets before the last 2 weeks of December, which traditionally has more of the holiday period where there is a significant amount of leave time already planned. We have SAP cost objects, so those can be fund centers, fund centers, cost centers, functional areas, funded programs, CIP codes, commitment items, basically any kind of primary source data in SAP would be uploaded to BFM, anticipating 1 time per week, starting the week of November 15th and ending the week of January 20th. The one area we would like to have any new requests for data earlier in January is any of functional areas at the 6-digit level, which are the program offer codes. We'd like to have those into SAP by January 10th, so we are able to make sure that the program offer book runs appropriately as the Bureau would like to have it show up. So this is very, very, very tiny font, and is definitely meant to be a handout and not a large room presentation. But what this is basically showing, it's also in the budget manual, is the last one is some of this narrative would be coming back in the adopted budget. And that's basically saying, let's only write it once. Let's only write it in the tense of what has council adopted. And that is predominantly the what becomes an adopted CIP or capital improvement plan. Budget notes and decision packages in the Pattern Stream documents would only come once they are part of the council adopted decisions as well. So this last little section is going to be about the budget dates right now and budget process for the FY 23-24. Are there any questions on the prior slides? So this slide is really just to serve as a reminder of the state and local budget law, legal budget requirements. We must have a proposed budget, a balanced all funds proposed budget released to the public. There must be at least 2 formal opportunities for testimony on the mayor's proposed budget. The council then convenes as a budget committee to approve the budget and send it to the Tax Supervising Conservation Commission. Required to occur can't be less than 20 days between the approved and the TSCC hearing, so we cannot cut that down. And then finally, you have your adopted budget hearing, which allows time for a first and second reading. Budget ordinances are approved upon passage. They do not have the 30-day wait. So these next couple slides take a couple different steps deeper into the city's budget process. The light blue slides represent some of those legal requirements and where those occur in the process. The darker blue slides are more about the city's process. So we generally start with the economic outlook. I believe on November 10th, next week's city economist Peter Holzman will be giving a presentation on this. The mayor's budget guidance will come out this fall. And then in December, mid-December, we are targeting the official December economic forecast. Bureaus will submit requested budgets at the end of January, provide review and recommendations for early March. Council conducts their work sessions and listening sessions in March and into April. And then the mayor proposes the budget moving to the more public and the legally required steps. These next 2 slides break this down into some of the more component parts. A lot of this is really to highlight the effort and what goes into planning, where bureaus are working in advance of the boxes on the previous slides, conducting interagency rate budgets, conducting utility rate budgets, preparing base budgets and operational budgets based on initial current service level delivery models. We know that budget advisory meetings are happening with community and involving stakeholders in development of budgets, plus the development of those 5-year CIPs, capital plans, fines and fees, budget equity toolkit, and then performance data. So all of this body of work is happening at this point in time until budgets are due on January 26th. And then that's what moves into the spring phases of the budget, which start to kick off some of the more public discussions with work sessions, listening sessions, and ultimately the mayor's proposed, the approved, and the final adopted budget. So, as I said, this was probably going to be a pretty quick session, but we wanted to make sure that we kept with the bringing information to end users as we can. And then our next session is set for November 16th. It is going to focus on program offers and the budget equity tool. Asena Cambez Lawrence from the Office of Equity will be here to present with our team. On December 2nd, Peter Holzman will be talking about general fund CAL targets and general fund overhead. And then we anticipate having a session on the 14th to really go into BFM form navigation, tech checks, and other reporting tools available to support bureaus and development of their guidance. As I said, we will have a date for mayor's budget guidance when we know when that will be. So that is today's presentation. Are there any questions, items we'd like to go back for, questions of our team here right now?
Question from Julie Hawken. Has a meeting invite for November 16th been sent?
No.
Been sent.
No, it has not been sent. I will send it shortly, like today. And I'll send the rest of the series. So it's just done. It's kind of daunting when you open a meeting invite and then realize you're sending it to a listserv of over 200 people. It just might be my own, like, don't press send. Okay. If there are no other questions or comments, then we can all enjoy another half an hour. Please, again, reach out to either myself or our team. CIP narrative CIP narratives, they'll be due with the, so the traditional process for when Pattern Stream is open is it typically opens after the approved and will be open for approximately a month in Pattern Stream. So you would be able to have that information into Pattern Stream planning on sometime probably between May 15th and June 15th is what we'd be looking at this year, approximately a month. Again, to remind is the whole concept behind that is to just make sure that we only have to produce that volume of narrative one time as opposed to 2 times for 2 different tenses of is this a requested tense or is this an adopted tense? Then I will likely stop the recording and